I need the scoop.
A Shakespeare-obsessed wife wants to name her twins Romeo and Juliet, and her husband is horrified by the implications. This Reddit confession sparked thousands of comments as viewers debated whether literary passion justifies potentially scarring your children for life. Get ready for a naming drama that reveals how pregnancy hormones and personal obsessions can create the most unexpected family conflicts.
My wife is a huge Shakespeare fan, and she loves the idea of naming the twins Romeo and Juliet. I'm against it. I can't get over the idea of naming our kids after a fictional couple who die. I do really like the name Juliet, and I even suggested that if we go with Juliet, maybe we could name our son Tybalt after Juliet's cousin. She insists that if we use Juliet, we have to use Romeo. I'll admit Romeo and Juliet is one of the only Shakespeare plays I've read, but I've tried to look online for some other Shakespearean sibling names we could use, like Ophelia and Laertes from Hamlet or Claudio, and Isabella from Much Ado About Nothing. She hasn't liked any of them because either their source isn't serious enough, or the names aren't recognisable or famous as Shakespearean. She's really stuck on this. On their own, I think they're lovely names, but I don't think they work for twins. I'm not sure if I'm overthinking the meaning behind the names and being weird about it, but I can't talk with anyone about this because she wants the twins' names to be a surprise. Someone suggested Viola and Sebastian, who are actually twins in Twelfth Night, and I love those two names. The fact that they're established siblings in Shakespeare might sway my wife. She doesn't like any changes or modern versions. They have to be from a Shakespeare work. That's why I've been trying to find names from established siblings. We did agree at first to consider names from books we both liked, but Romeo and Juliet was the first Shakespeare play she saw, and once she got this idea, she didn't want to hear any more suggestions. I'm hoping I can talk her out of it, but if I can't, I might need to show her that other people also think naming siblings after famous lovers is ill-advised. This is turning into our first major parenting disagreement, and we need to learn how to compromise and listen to each other's concerns.
Reddit users were unanimous in their horror, with many pointing out the uncomfortable implications that the original poster had been too polite to mention directly. The husband finally gathered courage to confront his wife's fixation, but her emotional breakdown revealed just how deeply invested she had become in this idea. A conversation with her best friend and a strategic movie night would soon provide the reality check that changed everything.
Thanks for all the comments and name suggestions. I didn't want to speak badly about my wife, but yes, I'm well aware of how deranged it is to name a pair of siblings after a fictional couple, and I was too much of a coward to bring up thing in my original post. In defense of my wife, her pregnancy has been very hard on her. It's her first, and naming the kids is the only thing she's seemed happy about these days. For context, she's seen the Romeo and Juliet play in person and is an avid reader of plays in general, but she's always liked Shakespeare most because they were the ones she studied. A few years ago, she even ran a Shakespeare club for kids at the local library. More recently, she was rereading the play and suggested we name the kids after the main characters. I was taken aback and told her we'd sleep on it, but the following day it was all she'd talk about, and she was so happy I didn't have the heart to talk her out of it. She became more and more fixated on it as the weeks went on. After making this post, I asked her again why it had to be these two names. She told me she always liked symbolic meanings and grand declarations of love, and she wanted that sort of bond to carry over to the kids in a family sense. She also mentioned that out of all the plays she'd read, Romeo and Juliet was the most iconic, that people would be able to recognise them, and that it would make it easier to talk to other parents if they asked why the kids were named Romeo and Juliet. I sat on this for a few days, and honestly it felt like I didn't know her. I pray this is her pregnancy brain talking, but this isn't her. She's always been a romantic and fixates on trends and ideas, but this is just weird. She's been like this as long as I've known her, jumping from fandom to fandom, getting immersed in something for a month and then not touching it for a year. This time has been hard on her, which is why I'm trying not to do anything that would make her uncomfortable. Yesterday, I finally told her point blank that we were not naming our kids after such a famous couple under any circumstances, and I showed her this thread. She refused to look at it and broke down. My wife asked me why I couldn't just let her have this. Some suggested she needed to hear how crazy she was from someone who wasn't me, so I told her best friend what was happening, and she was more horrified than I was. How I probably should have reacted. Her best friend came over after work, and I'm not exactly sure what happened, but I know they watched the 1968 movie version of Romeo and Juliet together, which I've been told has a sex scene. I think that snapped some sense into my wife. Her friend left a few hours ago, and my wife's been quiet, but she asked if we could look over the names I'd picked out again. We agreed that she would get the ultimate say in the names because she's carrying the kids. I didn't want to burst her bubble when she first got this idea, but as the weeks went on, I realised how serious it was. I'm not mad at her for the choice. I'm mad more at myself for not doing anything about it, and at both of us for not realising what it could do to our kids' future. but I shouldn't have waited so long to speak with her. Thanks again for all the comments. I think we both needed reality slapped into us. Her from her delusion and me from my apparent lack of common sense. She's still dead set on something Shakespeare or theatre related and somewhat matching, but now that her head is clearer, I hope we can pick something better. From the quick read of the comments I showed her, she did like the name Sebastian, but she's on the fence about Viola. I'll let her off the hook for now since she's so sick, but once we're back to normal life, I hope that if we ever have kids again, she won't want to name them after a couple again. I'll update this again once we finally have names picked out.
The community celebrated the couple's compromise, praising their ability to find names that honoured both parents' wishes while protecting their children's futures. After months of pregnancy stress and naming debates, the twins finally arrived healthy and happy. The final reveal of their chosen names would prove that sometimes the best solutions come from working together rather than winning alone.
I wanted to write a quick final update, as it's been a few months and everything has calmed down. My wife had the babies last month. They're both healthy and we're both exhausted. The names we ultimately chose are Sebastian Jacob and Juliet Elizabeth, inspired by Sebastian from Twelfth Night and Juliet from Romeo and Juliet, as well as Jacob and Elizabeth from the Jacobean and Elizabethan eras of theatre when Shakespeare wrote. A big thank you to the person who suggested that. My wife loved it. We had the twins at home for a few weeks before we named them. My wife was finally able to see them as our children, rather than extensions of herself to advertise her hobbies, hence the separate but still Shakespeare-themed names, which hopefully won't be too obvious. My wife's best friend will be their godmother, as a thank you for her support and reality checks throughout everything. And finally, a big thank you to everyone here for your name suggestions and advice. It helped more than you'll know. I'm hoping these names are much more subtle than what we originally had planned. All is going well so far.
Sometimes the most beautiful names come from finding balance between passion and practicality. This heartwarming conclusion shows how couples can navigate disagreements with love and compromise, ultimately creating something even better together. Share your thoughts on balancing personal interests with children's futures in the comments, and explore our other videos for more stories about family decisions that test relationships.